This is going to sound different. Again, it's still going to sound like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Ready? Alright, that kind of... Hey guys, Glenn here from JazzPianoLesson.tv. We're going to be looking at reharmonising, give a few tips on how to do it. This is one of my favourite things to do, is messing around with the chords. Alright, so we're messing around with the chords. We're not messing around with extensions. That's a different thing. You know, we're adding 9, 11, 13, all that kind of, or sharp 5 or something like that. But we're literally going to be changing the chord name completely. Now we've got a couple of principles. Now we've already done an episode on tritone substitutes, and that's a good place to start with your reharmonisation. And basically what we're doing there is you're leaving the guide tones the same, and you're changing the bass note, and if you're using the fifth and all that, the fifth has changed as well, but the guide tones, which are the 3 and the 7, have stayed the same. So here's a great principle that you can learn from the guide tones, is that what I found is that if you keep the important notes the same, then it's going to work okay. Alright, so here's a good example of that. You know, My Romance. Here's the 2, 5, 1, 2. Right, now these are the guide tones. That's the, you know, the 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 and the 3. Okay, we're going to go to the 3 and the 7 of the G chord, B and F. You saw that, that's what's happened here. Alright, to the C major 7. If I use the tritone substitute, all I have to do is I'm going down a semitone here, and so a tritone away, G, A, B, C sharp, an augmented fourth, or 3 tones. That's why it's called a tritone, right? Like that. Okay, guide tones are exactly the same, and they're what tells us what's going on. It tells us kind of what's going to happen next. All right, so that's the idea of the tritone. Now, that's one way to do it. The other thing is to think about what is the function of a chord, why does it exist, and you know, how can I go from can I use a different chord to that? Now we can use things like principles of mixture, which will help us to do reharmonisation as well. Now mixture is basically borrowing from the parallel major or minor scales. So for example, if we're in C major, these are the chords that belong to C major, right? Alright, I'm not changing, I'm just using white notes. We've got major, minor, minor, major, dominant, major, half diminished, right? Now that's the same thing no matter where I start. If I started with G, I'd have to have an F sharp. Now as long as every time I'm going to play F, I'll play an F sharp instead. I still have major, minor, minor, major, dominant, minor, half diminished, back to where I started, up an octave. Okay, so that's how you do. That's the chords of a major scale, right? The C and G is what I showed you. Now you can borrow from the minor. So if you're playing a major, you can borrow from the minor. So in other words, the minor being, or if you're raising the 7th, right? There's your harmonic minor. There's a natural minor, and then there's the melodic minor. You know, and it also gets used like that sometimes as well, going up with a raised and coming down with a natural. Okay, so they're the 3 kind of minors: the natural minor, melodic minor, and harmonic minor. What you can do with that is, so here's the chords, right? So you've got a C minor or a C minor major 7, alright? Then we have a D minor 7 flat 5 is the second chord. The The third chord, and this is where I think it starts to get even more interesting, is the actual root note changes from what it would be in a major. And we have an E flat major 7. Okay. Now instead, so what we can actually do is instead of an E, so if you want to play the third of a chord, 1, 2, 3, right, if you're in C major, what you can actually do is play the third of the minor instead. So instead of having E, G, B, D, an E flat minor chord, you can have a major chord, an E flat major chord. Now the interesting thing here is you might see that the guide tones are the same. Right, here was the guide tones for the minor. Guide tones are still the same. So it's a really interesting kind of way of approaching reharmonisation, looking at mixture, and probably, you know, the 3 and the 6 that works really well with, because the 3's there and there. So there's some of the ideas. Now we're going to look at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, alright, to reharmonise it, kind of make that sound a little bit cooler than it already does, alright. So Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, we have our, we're just going to do in the key of C, right? So we've got C, C, G, G, put a bar line in there, A, A, G. Alright, we're just going to do that much, right? Just to give a bit of an example of how to do this. Okay, now the original chords would be C, what we've got, would have F here and a C there, okay? That's our original. So what we might do is we're going to start with our C, and we're just going to make that a major 7 there. Alright, that's not really reharmonising, that's just really an extension. It's just colouring it a little bit, right? Right. And that's just root position there. Okay, so here's the original, right? Or if I'm using a different inversion, right? So we're gonna try and see what we can do with this. Now we're gonna use the principle of kind of trying to go from one place to another place as well, and then we're going to use tritone substitutes and mixtures, and we're going to see how crazy we can kind of make this sound. Okay, so we've got our C going to an F to a C. What we might do is a 2-5-1 leading into the F. That's kind of like, you know, we're thinking about how can we get from here to here. If we do a 2-5-1 leading into the F, that'll work really well. So that, you know, there's no extra chord put here, but we're gonna do G minor 7 here. Hopefully you can you see that there? Oh, yes you can. All right, I'm gonna bring it a bit closer. G minor 7 to C7. This is a 2-5-1. Okay. So now we have. All right. Is that cool? And I'm just making that a major 7 there and a major 7 there as well, okay? So we've got 2-5-1 leading into the F. That's what it was. Alright, now it's... Alright, that's what we've got so far. Why don't we do... On the second C, why don't we get a bit of movement going on? So we've got C, let's do a D minor here. And this is a fourth away from the G, so it's almost like a 2-5-1 kind of thing going on here, but I'm not going to, you know, it's a, you know, minor going to a minor. A proper 2-5 goes minor to dominant. But you can see how we're using that progression. It's really a, what we call a 6-5-2-1 of the key of F, right? So I've actually changed key there. D minor still belongs to C. You could argue as to what key is actually in there at that point in time. I don't mind. So here's our C, 7 mate. We're going to go to our D minor. So we've got that, can you hear that movement? Da, 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 da. Alright, that sounds really cool, right? I think that really sounds really cool. So we can see how we've got some movement going on there. We could do that a different way, and maybe go from the C to the F. We could maybe, why don't we just look at that bit there, C to the F, right? Go to the A. Okay, oh, put some stems on there. So we've got C, C, G, D, A. Alright, so we might do, let's say we're going to start with C and we want to get to F. We could just think, how can we get there? We could go down like that. C, B flat, A flat, G flat, F. Just kind of going down, you know, in an interesting way. I don't even know if how this will sound. I think it'll sound pretty good. We're going to make that a B flat. Let's make it a B flat 7. It's a 9 with that C there. What have we got? A flat. Now, have a look at the top note is G. We can't make it an A flat 7 because that would be G flat, right? So we're not going to do that. We can't make it a minor because we want the G flat to make it a minor as well. So let's make it an A flat major chord. Right, an A flat major chord. So that we can have the G on the top. Now, we'll come back to that in a little while and think about some things about mixture and stuff through there as well. That'll kind of make some more sense for you guys in a second. And then what do we have? A G flat. Now we've got. Well, I wonder how it's going to work there. It's not really going to work with a major chord there. We could call that. We could make it a G flat 7 chord. Because when it comes to a dominant chord, you can do a whole bunch of alterations to it. So we can make that that G a flat 9 basically. Okay, so we're going to make that a flat 9. Let's see what that sounds like. So we had, right, there's the original, or what we did back here was, which sounds nice, which I'm happy with. That's what we had there. This is going to sound different. Again, it's still going to sound like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Ready? Alright, that kind of sounds cool too. You hear that movement happening? What have we got? Alright, that sounds pretty cool. There's some ideas there that you might be able to do something with that. Now we'll go back to this one and let's muck around with this a little bit. Let's use that 2-5-1 principle and let's change the here the C7 to an F sharp. Well, it's a G flat, isn't it? It's the same. It's going to be the flat 9 chord. It's the same chord here, actually, isn't it? So you'll see that it's going to work all right. But it's going to work in this context because we're going down here by semitone. Now I could change this to an A flat here as well. It's almost becoming a little bit like the other one we've got, isn't it? If I change that to a tritone, it's going to be an A flat major of some sort, or we might make that major, just because we're going. So we've got. That sounds nice too. Let's go back. Why don't we change this? Let's make that go back to the C there. You can see how I'm just trying to muck around with principles here of reharmonizing so that we can change things around and make it sound cool, right? So C, A flat. Let's do the 2-5 into the C, but instead of the G to C, we're going to use the tritone of the G, which is it's really just a semitone above this C chord. So I'm going to use a D flat chord of some sort. Okay, a D flat chord. Now we've got a G, which becomes that's the sharp 11. So I'm going to use either major or dominant. That's what I really need to use. And I'm going to use major in this instance because we're going to the C after that, and there's the major. Alright, so we've got that very interesting kind of sounds. A D flat major 7 sharp 11, okay? There we go. To the A flat. Now it works okay because the D flat resolves to the C. It's not my favourite, I don't think, but that's still working there. Now mixture, let's just have a quick look at mixture, and then you guys can have a turn of doing something yourself. I'd love to have some video responses as to what you've created on something simple like a nursery rhyme or you know, just a simple melody. That'd be great to see. All right, so let's go. So what do we got? Let's go from that. Let's keep going. You know, getting it to the F chord there, and let's use some mixture. Okay, so let's go back to what we had before, which was C minor, D minor, G minor 7, C7, and let's see what we can change there. Okay, so in the key of C, and we're modulating here to the key of F, Alright, so if we just, and we can do a few simple things. If we change this one to the minor, we'd have the A flat there. It's kind of changing the chord a little bit. You can hear that minor influence coming in there. You might the D flat there. It's really, I guess that's not really changing it around too much. You know, that's changing it a little bit. All right, why don't we? What else have we got there? Why don't we try? Why don't we try this? Yeah, that'll work. So if we go C, D, we're going to go from the C, the D to the E minor. We're just moving up by a step, and then we're going to go up a 4. So we're going to do 2, 5 into D, which is going to 2, 5 into G to the C to the F, right? So I'm kind of doing this, but I'm not gonna do all that, right? So I'm just going to go to the A minor here, and then just hope that our ear kind of works with our ear, and then I'm going to use that to use some mixture there, right? So that still worked okay. Yeah, it still works there, especially when you got the C and the F kind of just anchoring it all in, and it just kind of works, right? So we might do what we're going to do is we're going to change the E minor 7 to an E flat major 7 using the principle of mixture, and then we're going to do the same thing for the A flat. We're going to make that an A flat major 7 using the principle of mixture. So we've got this. Alright, so there you go. There's a few ideas. Hopefully that helps, and I might try and put a bit of a fact sheet for us on jazzpianolessons.tv to make it a little bit easier for you as well, because there's a lot of information in there that hopefully is a little bit helpful for you. Alright guys, have an awesome day. jazzpianolessons.tv.